Jake was tired. His old cargo ship made strange noises as it landed on the lonely moonbase. Another boring delivery, another shady client. He didn't ask questions anymore, just fly, land, drop off the goods, and get paid. The cargo this time was large, heavy, and sealed tight. The tag on the container simply said, "Live property, do not open." Jake thought maybe it was livestock or rare animals. He didn't care, as long as the payment cleared. But something felt off. He waited 2 hours, but no one showed up. To collect the shipment, he sent messages to the contact frequency. No reply. The place was too quiet, too empty. He stood by the crate, staring at the big red lock. Then he heard it something soft, a whimper, then a faint cough. He leaned in, confused, and knocked gently. There was a pause. Then someone knocked back, weakly, like they had no strength left. Jake's heart jumped. That wasn't an animal, that was a person. He opened the emergency panel on the side of the crate. He wasn't supposed to, but this didn't feel normal. With a hiss of air, the crate slowly opened. Inside, the smell hit him first. It was awful sweat, fear, and something burnt. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and then he saw them, 12 alien girls, all chained, filthy, and weak, different species, different colors. Some had bruises, some had cuts, some had tears in their eyes. They backed away in fear when the light from the outside hit them. One of them, tall, blue-skinned with glowing marks, crawled forward. She looked straight at him and said in a shaking voice, You freed us?" Jake froze. This wasn't a mistake. This was slavery. Someone had used him to transport living beings, slaves. I didn't know," he stammered. The blue-skinned girl fell to her knees, her chains rattling. The others looked at him with hope and fear mixed together, like he was some kind of hero or their last chance. He looked around the empty moonbase. No one, no signals, just silence. This wasn't just a failed delivery. It was a trap, or maybe a dump site. "Can you walk?" he asked, looking at the girl. She nodded slowly. "We'll follow, master." "Don't call me that," Jake muttered. But they all started standing, one by one. They stepped out of the crate, thin, starving, weak, but still alive. One small girl with fur instead of skin held onto his arm. Shaking, he didn't know what to do. He didn't want slaves. He didn't want trouble. But he couldn't leave them here to die. He took a deep breath and said, "Come on, follow me. Let's get you out of here." Back on his ship, the girls sat close together, some still shaking, others just staring at the floor. Jake gave them water, emergency rations, blankets. They looked at him like he was a god. He locked the doors, double-checked the sensors, then sat in the pilot's seat. Hands shaking. What now? If he went to the authorities, would they arrest him? If the smugglers found out, would they come for him? One of the girls approached slowly. She had green eyes and silver hair, and her voice was soft. "You are not like the others," she said. "You're kind." "I'm just a delivery guy," Jake said. "I didn't sign up for this." "But you didn't leave us," she whispered. "That's enough." Jake looked at the console. His client ID was fake. His payment account was frozen. Whoever hired him had already vanished. He was stuck, broke, and now in possession of illegal cargo. No, not cargo people. They were living beings. And now they were his responsibility, even if he didn't want. And as he stared out the ship's window, he wondered how this had happened, how a simple job had turned into this. 12 alien girls sleeping in his hold, and the galaxy probably hunting him next. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "This is not my job," he whispered, then looked at the sleeping girls and said, "But maybe it's my fate." Outside the moon's orbit, a small hidden ship silently followed Jake's vessel. Inside, red lights blinked. A voice crackled through the dark. "Target has opened the crate. Tracking initiated." Jake woke up to the sound of soft whispers. For a moment, he forgot what had happened. Then he opened his eyes and saw them, alien girls, sitting quietly on the floor of his ship, watching him with wide, careful eyes. He sat up slowly, unsure. what to say. He wasn't used to people being on his ship, let alone a dozen scared, strange and silent passengers. They had cleaned themselves with water and towels he left out. One had even found a way to braid her long hair. They looked a little better, but still so tired, so lost. Jake stood and stretched, trying not to look nervous. "Okay," he said, voice low, "let's talk." The girls straightened their backs. As if he had given a command, one by one, they turned their eyes to him. He noticed how they listened carefully, as if waiting for orders. It made his skin crawl. "You're safe now," he said slowly. "You're not property, and I'm not your master." The blue-skinned girl with glowing marks tilted her head. "But you opened the crate," she said gently. "That means you own us." Jake stepped back, shaking his head. No, that's not how it works," he replied. "I don't want ownership. I just wanted to help." Another girl, small and furry with big eyes, whispered, "You saved us." "We belong to you now," Jake sighed, rubbing his face. He was a delivery man, not a hero, not a leader. But these girls clearly came from a place where kindness was rare, where freedom was only a dream. They had been trained to obey, to please, to fear. He tried again. "You can do what you want," he said. "You're free." The silver-haired girl with green eyes stepped forward. "We don't know what to want," she said softly. "Tell us what to do, and we'll do it." Jake felt a knot in his chest. They weren't just physically hurt. They were broken inside. His ship beeped, interrupting the moment. A message was coming in, encrypted and unknown. Jake read it once, then again. "Return the cargo," it said, "or be hunted." There was no name, no signature, just a warning. He didn't tell the girls, not yet. Instead, he walked back to the control panel and scanned for tracking devices. Maybe they were being followed. The girls watched him, quietly whispering among themselves. One of them approached with a small metal piece in her hand. Jake took it and realized what it was, part of a subdermal tracker. She had ripped it out of her own skin. Jake stared at her, shocked. "There might be more," she said calmly. "They put them inside us to keep us from running." Jake set the course away from the moon, deep into empty space. He needed time to think. He needed to decide what to do. And he needed to keep these girls safe until he figured it out. They followed him around the ship like shadows. One helped him clean the engine filters, another cooked a strange soup with leftover supplies. They were trying to be useful, trying to earn their place. It made Jake uncomfortable. He didn't want servants. He just didn't want them to suffer anymore. That night, as he tried to sleep, he heard soft knocking at his door. The silver-haired girl stood outside, holding a pillow. "We can't sleep," she whispered. "We're afraid they'll come back." Jake looked at her and saw the truth. Even in freedom, they were trapped by fear. He let her sit nearby, and soon others followed. They didn't talk. They just sat close to him, as if his presence gave them safety. Jake didn't know what to do. He had no plan, no backup, no weapons. He was just one man in an old ship, floating in space with 12 alien girls who thought he was their master. But he knew one thing: he couldn't give them back. Somewhere out there, the smugglers were watching, waiting for him to make the wrong move. But Jake wasn't going to make it easy for them. He looked at the sleeping girls and whispered, "I guess we're in this together now." And far in the distance, deep in a dark station, a smuggler captain smiled at the screen and said, "Let the hunt begin." The ship was too quiet. Jake sat at the console, staring at the warning on his screen. The message hadn't disappeared. "Return the cargo or be hunted." It repeated every hour like a ticking bomb. He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept much since he found the girls. Not because they were a problem, no. They were polite, quiet, and scared. It was the silence outside the ship that made him nervous. The girls were starting to trust him. One by one, they began speaking more, learning his name, offering help, even smiling sometimes. But that made it worse. Jake wasn't ready for any of this. He didn't want to get attached, but they were already looking at him like he was their protector. Late one night, a soft sound came from the engine room. Jake walked in slowly, flashlight in hand. He found one of the girls, purple-skinned, tall, sharp-eyed, sitting on the floor, holding a small device. "What's that?" he asked, stepping closer. She looked up, blinking. "A tracker," she whispered. "I found it under the floor, near the fuel tank." Jake cursed under his breath. They were being followed. "How many more?" he asked. She stood, her expression serious. "I don't know, but I can find them." That night, Jake and 3 of the girls searched the ship together. They found 2 more hidden devices, small, black and warm, each one sending signals. Each one dangerous. Jake crushed them with a wrench and tossed the pieces out the airlock. But the damage was already done. Whoever had placed them knew his location. Whoever owned the girls was coming. The next day, Jake landed on a small supply station. He needed food, parts, fuel, anything to keep moving. He told the girls to stay hidden. They obeyed without question. The station looked peaceful. Old traders. Dusty walls, flickering lights. Jake bought what he needed fast, head low. But when he returned to the dock, his ship doors were open. Panic hit him hard. He ran inside, heart pounding. The girls were fine, confused, scared, but unharmed. But someone had been there. On the control panel was a message burned into the screen. "You have what's ours." No name, no face, but the message was clear. Jake locked the ship tighter than ever. He checked every corner for new bugs or trackers. They were being hunted, and now there was no denying it. That night, while the ship floated in deep space, the blue-skinned girl with glowing marks sat beside Jake. She had barely spoken since the beginning. Now her voice was clear. "They will never stop," she said, "until they get us back or see us dead." Jake didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars outside the window. "I didn't ask for this," he whispered. She nodded. "Neither did we." One of the younger girls came running in with a small screen in her hands. "Someone tried to access the ship remotely," she said, eyes wide. Jake jumped into the pilot's seat. Checking the systems, he locked out external controls, changed access codes, turned off long-range scanners. Someone had tried to hijack his ship from afar. Now it was personal. The next morning, the girls gathered in the kitchen area. Jake brought what little food they had, and they all sat together. No one spoke for a long time. Then the furry girl asked softly, "Will you give us back?" Jake looked around the room. 12 faces stared at him, not just scared, but waiting, hoping. "No," he said firmly. "Never." Some of them smiled, others cried quietly. The purple-skinned girl stood and said, "Then we will protect this ship too." Jake didn't understand what she meant until later. He found her in the storage bay, building something with wires and scrap. Other girls joined her, helping with tools, working as a team. They were preparing for something. They weren't just weak, scared slaves anymore. They were survivors. And now they were ready to fight far across the galaxy, in a dark chamber filled with blinking lights. A man in black armor stared at a screen. His eyes were cold. His voice was sharp. "The human won't hand them over," he said. "Then we take them," another voice replied. The room filled with laughter, not happy laughter, but the kind that comes before violence. Jake had no idea how close danger really was, but he knew one thing. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about standing for something. And for the first time in his life, Jake felt like he had something worth protecting. Asterisk, the lights flickered across the hallway as Jake walked toward the cargo bay. Something was glowing behind the metal door, faint but strange. He opened it slowly, unsure of what he would find, and what he saw made him freeze. The blue-skinned girl with glowing marks was floating off the ground. Her eyes closed, her body surrounded by a soft blue light. The other girls stood around her, silent, holding hands. Jake didn't understand what was happening. Suddenly, her body dropped back down gently. The glow faded, her breathing fast but steady. She looked up at him, her face full of surprise and confusion. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just happened." Jake helped her sit down. "What was?" That? He asked. The silver-haired girl answered from behind him. She's not just a slave, she said. She was once trained as a memory seer. Jake blinked. What does that mean? The silver-haired girl stepped forward, her voice calm. She can reach into people's memories, and sometimes the memories of objects too. Jake stared at the glowing marks on the girl's skin. They weren't tattoos, they were alive. He had never seen anything like it that night. The girls began telling their stories, one by one, sitting in a quiet circle. The furry girl was from a jungle moon, taken when she was just a child. The tall purple one used to be a soldier in her home planet's army, betrayed by her own commander. The smallest girl, with silver scales on her arms, was once considered a rare pet in some sick collector's cage. Jake listened, silent. He didn't know how to comfort them. He just sat there, letting them speak, letting them breathe. They weren't just cargo, they were people, each one with a life stolen, each one with a secret locked away. Later, in the quiet of the engine room, the purple soldier girl found Jake. She held a broken metal piece in her hands. I can fight, she said. If you teach me how your ship works, I can help protect it. Jake gave her a long look, then nodded slowly. If we're going to survive, I'll need all the help I can get. The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. Jake taught them basic systems, how to seal doors, how to manage power, how to monitor for threats. The girls began moving with purpose. They cleaned the ship, fixed wiring, even managed the food rations. It felt less like a hiding place now. It felt like a home. One evening, while Jake checked the long-range sensors, the memory seer girl approached quietly. I saw something, she said. When I touched that crate in the cargo bay. Jake turned to her, curious. She looked nervous, her fingers shaking slightly. I saw men in black masks. One had a symbol on his glove, a red hand with a star. Jake's eyes narrowed. He had heard of that symbol whispers in dark stations, rumors of a slaver guild operating in hidden corners of space. Dangerous people, untouchable by law. We have to move again, he said quietly. The girl grabbed his arm. There's more, she said. I saw a girl just like me, still trapped somewhere. And I think they're using her to track us. Jake froze. Could someone still be connected to them? Could another girl still be broadcasting a signal without knowing? If so, they weren't safe yet. That night, Jake ran a full body scan on each girl. He apologized, but they understood. After hours of scanning, he found a small device buried deep under the skin of the youngest girl. She didn't even know it was there. Jake looked at the others. We need to get this out of her, he said. The next moments were tense. Jake sterilized tools, gave her something to bite on, and carefully began to remove the tracker. The girl didn't scream. She only cried silently, gripping Jake's hand the whole time. When the device came out, it blinked once, then shut down. Jake crushed it under his boot. Everyone in the room took a breath. The silver-haired girl placed a blanket over the child and whispered, "You're safe now." But they all knew safety was temporary. Somewhere out there, someone had been watching that signal. And now that it was gone, they would know something had changed. Jake sat alone in the control room. Later that night, he watched the stars move by slowly. He wasn't just running from danger anymore. He was carrying it with him. He touched the old controls of his ship and whispered, "I never asked for this, but I won't let them take you back." And deep in the dark, on a hidden world lit by cold neon, a smuggler captain stared at a screen flashing red. "Signal lost," a voice reported. The captain stood, furious. "Find them," he growled. "I want that human's head and the girls returned alive." A cold alarm sliced through the silence. Jake jumped out of bed and rushed to the control panel. Red lights blinked across the ship's main screen. Unidentified vessels, 3 of them closing in fast. He tapped the console, trying to boost the scanner range. The ships weren't broadcasting any ID codes. Pirates, maybe, or were smugglers. The same ones hunting the girls. He rushed to the common area where the girls were sleeping. "Wake up," he said. voice sharp. Everyone now. They stirred slowly, confused at first, until they saw the fear in his eyes. The silver-haired girl stood first. Already alert. They found us, she said softly. Jake nodded. I don't know how, but they're almost on top of us. The purple-skinned ex-soldier stepped forward. Then we fight, she said, her eyes cold and ready. Jake shook his head. No weapons, no armor, nothing strong enough to take on 3 ships. He paced the room, thinking fast. He had one advantage. They didn't know he knew they were coming, yet we hide, Jake said suddenly. But smartly. He told the girls to get into the maintenance shafts that ran under the floor. They didn't ask questions. They just moved quickly, silently, trusting him. Jake powered down the ship's main engines to make it look dead. He disabled external lights, killed the heat signature from the outside. It would look like a drifting, broken ship. He sat in the pilot's chair, hands sweating, eyes fixed on the screen. Minutes passed like hours. Then the first shadow passed over the hull. They were here. A crackling voice came through the comms. This is the Red Hand Syndicate, it said. We know what's aboard your ship, human. Jake didn't answer. He watched the signal trace their exact position. They weren't docking yet, just scanning, circling, waiting. The voice continued. Return the cargo, and we'll let you live. Still Jake said nothing. The girls hid quietly beneath the floor, listening to every word. The youngest one clutched a piece of metal like a knife. The memory-seer girl pressed her hand to the cold wall. Her eyes closed. Someone's boarding, she whispered. I can feel their intent. A loud clang echoed through the hull. They were trying to force entry. Jake flipped a silent alarm. The panel next to the engine core opened, revealing a tight escape shaft. Plan B, he whispered to himself. The door burst open, and 2 masked figures stepped inside with plasma rifles. They looked around confused. No crew, no lights, no movement. Ship's empty, one said. Scan again, the other replied. The girls are here. I can feel them. Jake waited. Hidden in the shadows near the emergency panel. He knew the layout better than anyone. As one of the smugglers stepped forward, Jake activated the vent burst. A cloud of hot gas hit the man's face, and he screamed, dropping his weapon. Jake jumped, grabbing the gun, firing once, missing. The second smuggler fired back. Grazing Jake's shoulder, he ran, ducking into the engine bay. Blood soaked his sleeve. But he kept going. They were shouting now, chasing him through his own ship. But Jake was faster and more desperate. In the maintenance shafts, the girls could hear everything. Gunshots, footsteps, Jake's voice shouting something. The purple soldier girl couldn't stay hidden anymore. She crawled out, grabbed the dropped rifle, and took aim. When the smuggler turned the corner, she fired. The shot hit his leg, and he went down screaming. Jake blinked in surprise as she stood over the man. I said I could fight, she said, handing him the rifle. The other smuggler escaped back to his ship. Jake sealed the docking clamp. Before they could return for backup, 2 ships still hovered outside, but they didn't attack. They were waiting for orders. Jake dragged the injured smuggler to the holding bay. The girls gathered around, staring at him like a ghost from their past. He tried to look brave, but fear showed in his eyes. The memory-seer girl touched his forehead gently. He screamed. Twisting away, she saw everything, Jake realized. She knows where they're based. They didn't speak for a long time. The silver-haired girl finally said what everyone was thinking. They won't stop, Jake nodded, breathing hard. Then we stopped them first, from a quiet cargo pilot with no purpose. Jake was now something else, a protector, a fighter, and maybe something more. The girls stood around him, waiting for his next move. He looked at the stars and whispered, Let's finish this. Jake sat alone in the dark cockpit. The stars outside were cold and distant, but inside his chest, something burned hotter than any engine. He held a small piece of broken tracker in his hand, a reminder of the danger they faced and the price he might have to pay. The ship was quiet now, too quiet. He knew the smugglers were hunting them harder than ever. But the girls had grown stronger, braver. They weren't just scared slaves anymore. They were fighters, survivors, and somehow his family. He remembered the note left behind on the Galactic communication board. They were gone 12 girls. Disappeared without a trace. A message. "Don't come after us." Jake clenched his fists. No way was he leaving them alone. The youngest girl, the one with fur, stood in the doorway quietly. She looked up at him, eyes full of hope and fear. "Are you going to leave us?" she whispered. Jake shook his head, voice steady. "No," he said simply. "We fight together." He opened the ship's database, searching for the smuggler's base. The memory-seer girl's visions had helped. The purple-skinned soldier gave him a rough map from her knowledge. Together, they planned a strike, not just to run, but to end this nightmare. The ship hummed as they prepared. Repairs. Weapons scavenged from old crates, homemade traps. The girls worked side by side with Jake, no longer afraid, no longer slaves. One by one, they stood at the ready. The blue-skinned seer touched Jake's shoulder. "You carry our hope," she said softly. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of her words. This was no longer about survival. This was about justice. The jump through hyperspace was tense. Jake kept his hands steady on the controls. The others waited in silence. When they arrived, the smuggler base was dark and quiet. Too quiet. They docked stealthily in a hidden bay. Jake checked the scanner's security was light, but dangerous. The purple soldier smiled grimly. "This is our chance," she said. Jake drew a deep breath. "Let's move." Inside the base, shadows moved and whispered. Jake led the way. The girls flanked him. They used skills they had hidden for years. Silent steps. Quick strikes, careful hacking. The first alarm came unexpectedly. Red lights flashed. Guards rushed to their positions. Jake grabbed a weapon for the first time. Fired with shaky hands, but deadly intent. The fight was chaotic, but the girls were fierce. They fought not just for freedom, but for each other. Jake saw their strength, their pain, and their hope in every move. Deep in the heart of the base, they found a holding room. Empty cages, cold and broken. One cage still held a shadow, a young alien girl, trembling but alive. Jake opened the door, and she fell into his arms. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming. They didn't stop. They moved to destroy the base's control center. Jake hacked into the systems, planting viruses to erase records. The base began to shut down, alarms screaming. They ran toward the exit. The smugglers' reinforcements arrived too late. Outside, Jake's ship waited, engines roaring. They blasted off as explosions shook the ground. The girls cheered, hugging each other. Jake smiled, exhausted but proud. Back in space, Jake looked at the faces around him. No longer slaves, no longer victims. They were free, and they were his crew. He whispered to himself, "We're just getting started." The stars stretched endlessly ahead as Jake's ship cut through the quiet darkness. The weight of the past battles hung in the air like smoke, but the faces around him shone with hope, strength, and new life. No longer prisoners or cargo, but friends, comrades, a family. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls. He looked around at the crew he never expected to have. The blue-skinned memory seer was checking the navigation, her eyes bright with wonder. The purple-skinned soldier was sharpening a blade. Calm and focused, the small furry girl hummed softly, braiding her hair with a smile. Each one had changed, grown beyond the pain and fear. "Where to now?" Jake asked quietly. The silver-haired girl smiled. "Anywhere we want," the youngest one spoke up. "Somewhere safe where no one hunts us." Jake nodded, heart full. He set the course for a hidden system on the edge of known space. A place whispered about in old space tales. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake's mind drifted back. From the moment he opened that crate and found those scared girls, to now fighting smugglers, surviving attacks, building trust. He had been just a delivery man then. Now he was something more: captain, protector, and friend. A soft beep interrupted his thoughts. A message appeared on the screen, an unknown frequency. Encrypted, Jake hesitated, then opened it. The words surprised him. "A new alliance is ready," it read. "Humans and aliens united against slavery and tyranny." Jake smiled. This was bigger than just him and his crew. This was a beginning of something new, something better. The girls gathered around as he read the message aloud. Their eyes sparkled with hope and determination. They had escaped chains. But now they dreamed of freedom for all, not just for themselves. The ship's eye chimed softly. "Supplies are low. Destination will arrive in 2 hours." Jake looked forward, past the stars. Ready for whatever came next, he turned to the crew and said, "We have a long journey ahead, but together, we will find our place in this vast universe." They all nodded, united, strong, free, outside. The endless stars waited, and Jake's ship sailed onward, not as a vessel of cargo, but as a home. For those who believed in a better future, where hope was stronger than fear. And every new day was a chance to change the stars.